This is the IELTS listening test. You will hear a number of different recordings and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 parts. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet.
You're going to hear a conversation between a student and an academic advisor.
First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 4.
Hello there, you must be Jane. Please come in. My name is Mrs. Dunstan.
Hello, Mrs. Dunstan. Pleased to meet you.
All right now, let's see. Now, you're interested in attending university in Canada, is that right?
Yes, and I have a lot of questions to ask you.
Okay, but before I begin to answer your questions, I need to ask you a few questions first. Now, your major is...
Engineering. Mechanical engineering.
Right, and where did you graduate?
I graduated from the Beijing Institute of Machinery in July 1998. I completed my bachelor's degree.
Okay, now, I'm assuming you'll want to continue studying in that field, am I right?
Actually, I'd prefer to do an MBA if possible. But if I have no other choice, then I'll continue in mechanical engineering.
Okay, now, are you familiar with the requirements for an MBA degree?
Yes.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 5 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 5 to 10.
I think I need to do well on the GMAT, and I'll definitely need the TOEFL or IELTS, right?
That's right. You'll need at least 600 on the TOEFL or 6.5 on IELTS. In addition, you need to have completed a bachelor's degree too. Did you take the GMAT yet?
No, but I plan to take it in August.
The requirements for a master's degree in engineering are a little different. You'll need to take the GRE and of course the TOEFL or IELTS.
I see. And when do I start to apply?
The best time to start the application process is in November or December of the year prior to your intended year of study. Application forms are usually available in September or October.
Which schools in Canada offer the MBA degree?
Of the approximately 50 universities in Canada, 20 offer an MBA. Here's a small booklet summarising Canadian university programmes. You'll find all the information on page 22.
Great, thanks. And how about tuition and scholarships?
Tuition for MBA programmes has been steadily increasing. Some universities now charge the full tuition, meaning that there is no government subsidy. Those universities cost about $10,000 per year, and it's a 2-year programme. Other universities are still government subsidised, so the tuition is only about $4,500 per year. In terms of scholarships, usually the top 5 students entering the MBA programme are given a generous scholarship. All other students have to pay the full fees. International students have to pay the full tuition, that's $10,000 per year.
Oh, is it very difficult to get into an MBA programme?
Yes, in fact, the competition is very strong. MBA graduates have a pretty easy time finding a job, so many students are eager to do the programme thinking it will guarantee them success in their careers.
Well, it sure does sound like an excellent way to start a promising future. What is the school year like?
Classes begin in September each year and finish before Christmas. They resume after New Year and finish at the end of April.
And after April?
Why, that's your summer holiday.
Sounds great. I want to thank you, Mrs. Dustin, for all your help. I really do appreciate it.
You're very welcome, and if you have any other questions, please feel free to contact me. You know my number, right?
I sure do. Thanks very much.
Goodbye.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2. Part 2.
First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 17. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 17.
Hello, and thanks everyone for coming here today. I know it's always a bit stressful going for a job interview, but it's best to be prepared. For any of you who may not know me, my name is Fiona Ogilvie, and my job is to offer guidance and support for students with special needs. Now, you wouldn't be here today if you weren't interested in finding a job in the holidays. So let's get down to it and see what things you need to be looking out for. Most of you, I hope, will be applying for jobs with the companies that have been recommended by the university. The reason for this is that we here at the university already know these companies and have established good working relationships with them. I've also been to visit all of them and checked out the facilities they have to offer. You really need to make informed choices when you're looking for a job and make sure you know before you even get to the interview stage that your needs will be met. But I know that some of you are applying for jobs independently and have looked at companies outside the university recommended list. So for you, it's best to plan ahead and be aware of what it is you may need while you're working. Things that you need to check when you go for an interview are there enough toilet facilities and are these easily accessible? Also, you want to check that all the public areas inside the building are barrier-free, so you can get direct access to these public spaces whenever you need to. And ask about ramps into the building, so you know how many there are and where they are located. These kinds of things are so much more difficult to sort out when you've started work, as they take time. But ramps are an absolute must, so please make sure you know where they are. Another thing you must make sure of is that the lifts have the correct lowered control panels. Ask if all the lifts have this facility or if it's only certain ones. Now, something I think that is often overlooked is working hours. What you want to make sure of is that you get flexi time. This basically means that your working hours are flexible and you can clock on and clock off in times that suit you. Within reason, of course. Most companies do recognise that it takes much longer for someone in a wheelchair to get on and off buses and trains. Public transport can take that much longer, so you need to be organised and prepared. And for those of you lucky enough to own a car, check how many disability parking spaces are available. Remember that it's your right to have a disabled parking space. These also need to be near enough to a wheelchair accessible entrance or ramp. OK, are there any questions before we move on?
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 18 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 18 to 20.
Right, let's move on then. Now I want to talk you through the series of visits to companies which we've got planned for next week. On Monday morning, we will be visiting the Lowland Hotel. They have various summer jobs available, working as a receptionist or conference organiser in their busy conference centre, organising and setting up conferences. You need to be prepared for working in an office environment and spending quite a bit of time talking on the telephone. The bus leaves for the hotel at 9 a.m, so make sure you leave yourself plenty of time to get there. When you arrive at the hotel, please gather in the reception area and wait for someone to take you to your first session, which will be a talk. The talk at the hotel will begin at 10 a.m, and then there will be a short tour of the hotel. There will be a light lunch provided, which is usually salads and sandwiches. The next place we'll be visiting will be on Tuesday afternoon. We'll be going to visit a little local company that makes handmade paper and cards. For those of you studying art, this may be just what you're looking for. We'll be taken on a tour of the company which lasts 3 hours. The tour will start at 3:30 p.m, and after that you'll have a chance to meet some of the staff. Tea and coffee will also be provided. We have no trips planned for Wednesday, but on Thursday morning we'll be going to Tobago Travel Agency. This is a very popular choice amongst our students because you can get student discounts on holidays. We've booked a coach for this, and it'll leave from outside the refectory at 8 a.m. You'll need to bring a packed lunch for this, so please don't forget. There is a little canteen where you can buy hot and cold food, but this is closed on Thursdays. Friday, we'll be having representatives from all the companies visiting us, so you will have a chance to ask any questions, and of course, put your name down on the list if you're interested in working for them over the summer. This event will take place in the main hall next to the library, and it'll run from 10:30 until 4. I really hope you make the most of this excellent opportunity to not only earn yourself some extra money, but also to gain experience of what it's like to work. And if you'd like to find out more, then please ask some of the students who worked last year. They're all wearing green badges and will be happy to speak to you afterwards.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3. Part 3.
Maria is a student at university. She has handed the first draft of an essay to her tutor. The tutor has read it, and now they are discussing ways the essay can be improved. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Listen carefully to the first part of the conversation and answer questions 21 to 25.
Well, Maria, I have to say I was quite impressed by your essay. It's a big improvement on the last one,
Really? I'm glad. I put a lot more work into this one. I really spent ages on it.
And it shows. You've addressed most of the problems I pointed out last time. In particular, the style and language are much more appropriate for an academic essay.
So that aspect is okay?
Absolutely. If you carry on like this, you shouldn't have any significant problems in that department.
That's a relief. I've been quite worried about that, although I've been reading a lot of other essays to try to get the right style.
Well, I'd say you've been successful. There are just one or two minor things you could look at. Your punctuation's quite basic. It's really just full stops and commas. And parentheses.
Brackets?
Yes, brackets if you prefer. In academic writing, these are best used only occasionally, if at all. You use them rather too often.
Okay, I see.
And I'm sorry to mention it, but your spelling.
I know. But I'm working on a foreign computer. The spell checker doesn't work for English.
Are you sure? Have you tried changing the setting to English?
No, I haven't.
Well, I should see if that's possible. I haven't marked you down this time, but, well, some of my colleagues are a bit old-fashioned about spelling. I'd try to get that sorted out if I were you.
Okay, I understand. I'll try to change the setting.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
The only major problem I have with the content of your essay is the introduction. The introduction should, well, introduce the theme of the essay. You've put some of the most important points there. For example, this bit. The statistics about the growth of railways in the 1850s. That really should go in the main body of the essay. And so should this paragraph about changes in patterns of employment. In general, I'd say your introductory section should be no more than half as long as it is at the moment.
Okay. And I should move those points forward?
Precisely. And going back to the railways, they're one of the most significant factors for change in this period. But apart from those statistics in the introduction, you only briefly mention them. I'd like to see a lot more on that, and the influence the expansion of the railways had on patterns of social and economic behaviour.
You mean how with the railways people could travel to find work and could meet people from other areas?
Exactly. Then in the midsection, well, it's not a big thing, but this quotation from the Times.
You think it's too long?
Well, you said it.
I couldn't think of a way to shorten it.
Do you think it's really necessary?
You mean I could just get rid of it?
Yes. You've already made the point and backed it up with other evidence. The quotation's redundant, really.
Okay. Well, that'll be easy.
There were various other minor points, which I've noted in the margins. You can look at those later. But moving forward to the end here, I wasn't quite sure what this meant.
The final paragraph?
Yes. Are you saying that, on the whole, the changes of the mid-19th century tended to improve the lives of ordinary people or not? It's not very clear.
It's not?
No, it isn't. I'd add a few lines clarifying your position.
Okay. When do you want the final draft?
No, the end of term will be fine. But there was just one other thing, the bibliography. Did you really read all these books?
No.
Just the books you actually consulted will be fine. You don't need to include everything ever published on the subject.
Right, okay. Thanks. Bye.
Goodbye.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to Part 4.
Part 4. You are going to hear a talk on 2 famous American presidents. As you listen, fill the missing information in the notes below. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
John F. Kennedy and Abraham Lincoln lived in different times and had very different family and educational backgrounds. Kennedy lived in the 20th century, while Lincoln lived in the 19th century. Kennedy was born in 1917, whereas Lincoln was born more than 100 years earlier, in 1809. As for their family backgrounds, Kennedy came from a rich family, but Lincoln's family was not wealthy. Because Kennedy came from a wealthy family, he was able to attend expensive private schools. He graduated from Harvard University. Lincoln, on the other hand, had only 1 year of formal schooling. In spite of his lack of normal schooling, he became a well-known lawyer. He taught himself law by reading law books. Lincoln was, in other words, a self-educated man. In spite of these differences in Kennedy and Lincoln's backgrounds, some interesting similarities between the 2 men are evident. In fact, many books have been written about the strange coincidences in the lives of these 2 men. For example, take their political careers. Lincoln began his political career as a U.S. congressman. Similarly, Kennedy also began his political career as a congressman. Lincoln was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in 1847. Kennedy was elected to the House in 1947. They went to the Congress just 100 years apart. Another interesting coincidence is that each man was elected President of the United States in a year ending with the number 60. Lincoln was elected President in 1860 and Kennedy was elected in 1960. Furthermore, both men were president during years of civil unrest in the country. Lincoln was president during the American Civil War. During Kennedy's term of office, civil unrest took the form of civil rights demonstrations. Another striking similarity between the 2 men was that, as you probably know, neither lived to complete his term in office. Lincoln and Kennedy were both assassinated while in office. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, Texas, after only 1,000 days in office. Lincoln was assassinated in 1865. A few days after the end of the American Civil War. It's rather curious to note that both presidents were shot while they were sitting next to their wives. These are only a few examples of the uncanny and unusual similarities between the destinies of these 2 American men, who had a tremendous impact on the social and political life of the United States and the imagination of the American people.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.